Hi, this is Ken McCarthy, and this is the Real Food Channel, bringing you information about your health, how to protect it, how to grow it, how to strengthen yourself, advise yourself, educate yourself, and we like to talk with authors and filmmakers, and today we're talking about the all-important topic that we need to be reminded of on a regular basis, which is the state of our honeybees. And a very important film on this topic, Vanishing of the Bees, produced and directed by Miriam Henane. And we're going to be talking with her directly, and we're going to start actually right now. So welcome, Miriam.
Thank you. Hi. I would like to just give a shout out to George Langworthy, who's my co-director on the film. And the film came out, it came out in 2011. So there was an anniversary because colony collapse disorder, which was the phenomenon of the bees disappearing all at once, was announced 2006 at the end, and kind of 2007. And I tell people that the film is still alive because the bees are still dying, because typically a dock has a certain shelf life. And there's still people today that have not heard or know that the bees, that they're disappearing, that they pollinate 1 in every 3 bites of the food that we eat. And so there was a 10-year anniversary, I think it was a year and a half ago now, of colony collapse that coincided with Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. And the irony is that, she brought DDT to the forefront before the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, existed. And these systemic pesticides, these nicotine-based nicotinoids, are 5,000 to 10,000 times more dangerous than DDT. They stay in the soil up to 18 years, and their metabolites are oftentimes more dangerous than the plant, the parent compound. And we're not only seeing that bees are dying. We give focus to the honeybees because I guess from a selfish point of view, they're the most valuable to us. But the truth is the native bees, the birds, the butterflies, the bats, and aquatic life is all being impacted by systemic pesticides. And they're systemic because the old types of pesticides were organophosphates that we would spray, we still spray, over the crops, but these are embedded in the soil and entrenched in the seed, and so it becomes part of the plant, and then the bees bring it back in the form of pollen and nectar, and then it doesn't impact the immediate generation. The queen is laying 2,500 eggs-ish a day, so it impacts the future generations, and it's quite insidious, as we see many of these poisons are insidious because you can't point out directly and say, this is what happened. And that's part of the grand scheme of things. So my message today is that we are the bees slowly being poisoned by sublethal doses, death by 1,000 cuts. And studies have been conducted to show how a neonic can come into contact with a fungicide or an herbicide and become 1,000 times more dangerous or toxic. And we have about 85,000 unregulated chemicals in the environment. And how are they interacting with one another? So as a functional medicine consultant, to me, when I'm dealing with a client, it's very important to incorporate detox, and detox is not a juice fast. It's supporting phase 1 and phase 2 of detoxing your mechanism. You're bolstering your liver, looking at genetic SNPs. It's complex, but a lot of times, we have 80 million autoimmune sufferers. We have 1 in every 2 people today that has a chronic illness. And it's because of our polluted environment through the air, the soil, the water, and the weaponized food supply.
Wow, That's a lot. Maybe we'll go back over some of this and unpack it. So what inspires you in particular? Because making a film is a big undertaking, and I imagine this was an independently financed film. So there's all that involved, and getting the money together, and just going through all the significant effort to get a film in the can and get it out there for people to see. What inspired you to do that?
Yeah, it definitely took 5 years, and we took 300 hours and distilled them into 86 minutes or 87 minutes. And George had a background in film. My background is journalism, and I had a near-death experience at the age of 29 where I was new to this country from Canada. So I grew up with health, taking health for granted, and being hit by a Ford Explorer at 30 miles an hour or so, and being dragged from one crosswalk to the next, and breaking several bones, had a metal rod put in my femur, and really wanted to do something that was of service, that was greater than me. And up until then, as a journalist, as a freelancer, I had worked for MSNBC, and I quit. I was kind of disgusted for many reasons at the way the news was covered, coming from Canada, where we covered international news, as opposed to spending $1 million on a chopper during sweeps to cover chases and crap. So, and I was also covering sex and spirituality and Hollywood. So I was writing for the Hollywood Reporter, I was writing for Maxim, I was writing for Penthouse, and I just kind of pivoted. And one of my first projects was working for Robert Greenwald and the Sierra Club on the Sierra Club Chronicles. So co-produced a piece on the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and another one on the port and the toxicity of the LA port, and then another one on the asbestos in 9/11. And so I befriended George, and we talked about doing a project together, and his friend told him about the bees, and I have vision, and I believed this would be a success because it's a global issue. It was a mystery, so George is into mysteries, and I spent a half an hour or more than that, one afternoon researching honeybees, and I was touched by the fact that they're sacred. They represent the sacred feminine, and they're selfless. And I didn't know they pollinated one in every 3 bites of the food that we eat. A year prior, I was hiking. I still had the metal rod in my leg that 99% of humans keep in their body, and I removed, and was in a lot of physical pain. And I heard a very ominous sound, and I saw this big black cloud coming at me from the left, and the bees were swarming, and they passed through me, because in that mode they're looking for their next home. So I literally had a swarm of bees pass through me a year before, and then after deciding I want to make this movie, I literally started having magical bee encounters that continue to this day. And I feel, and so many times I have people say they meet me, and then something happens with a honeybee. They get stung. A bee follows them, and they're like, I better call Miriam. It's kind of like, when you hear a new word, and then all of a sudden you see it everywhere. So a week after deciding that I was going to make the movie, I drove through a swarm on Beverly Boulevard, on La Cienega and Beverly, and everyone was putting their windows up, and I was putting my windows down, and felt it was a sign. I mean, everything, down to how we got Ellen Page I say that a honeybee gave up her life to put me in touch with Ellen. The bees are magical. I tell people that all roads lead to bee. So anyway, that's the answer to your question as to wanting to be in service. And I remember being in the bath one day and was like, oh my God, what happens? What if I'm going to become just a crazy bee lady? And because the bees, pun intended, have stuck. And they're very much a part of my world, and I am in service to all that they represent. They're ancient, and there's so many things we can learn from them.
Well, you may already be aware of this book. I think it's called "When Women Were Drummers" or "When the Drummers Were Women." Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, it's by Lane Redmond, who's
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
now passed away.
I know she lived right near where I live here in upstate New York, and
I
it,
filmed with her.
oh really? Oh, I mean, I never met her, but what a wonderful. I knew people that knew her, uh,
Yeah,
and for folks that don't know that book, it's a marvelous book. I wish I could remember the exact title.
I just got the chills.
Yeah.
Mm.
And what's so interesting about that book is, first of all, she shows a lot of artwork that shows conclusively that women played drums back in the ancient times, but also that these drummers were somehow connected with the honeybee and bees. And this was not just
The
one culture or one epoch of time. This was continuously throughout ancient times, all different cultures. So there is something very important and fundamental.
the bee goddesses played the drum, and I took a workshop in North Carolina with Lane, and she had just discovered that she had cancer, and watched and filmed her sitting by the hive and getting stung by tons of bees and just sitting there because bees, their venom is medicinal, just like everything that they make is medicinal. And so it was a very touching moment, and it was a highlight to meet her. I mean, everything in making this film, it was difficult, and but so blessed, to have spent time outside in nature and just being of service and being part of something greater.
And you captured a lot of that in your film called Vanishing of the Bees. And when people watch this film, I'm going to encourage everybody, hunt this film down. We're going to give a link. Get a copy of it, watch it. What kinds of things can people expect to see in the film? What are they going to experience and learn? And
Well, I mean, honestly, I think we did a really damn good job of capturing, like I said, 300 hours and distilling it into 87 minutes. And we could have done a whole series and covering not only the history of the honeybees, but also just uncovering this mystery that in the end turned out to be like, what's the mystery? The mystery is that this is a mystery because it's very obvious that the bees are disappearing because of these systemic pesticides. And so whoever wants to blame it on the viruses or the mites, viruses and mites have been with us for thousands of years. As humans and as an insect, what's happened is that our immune system, the bee's immune system, has been whittled down. So I think that people will gain. We also consciously put solutions. The movie has been translated in 13 languages. There's an educational version of the film with I'm forgetting the word now. With materials to help, with a workbook to help youth really develop critical thinking, which I think is at an all-time low, and to really inspire people on, our campaign was called "Be the Change," after Gandhi's quote, and it is really about being the change that you want to see. And if we look at where we were in our consciousness in 2007 and where we are in 2019, I mean, the film, I believe, was integral in raising awareness, but I am still shocked today. Unfortunately, Netflix had it streaming, and it was the number one film on Netflix as a doc for a while,
Oh,
just period.
wow.
And because Netflix invested all their, all this money in their own content, they removed the film, and who's going to get a DVD? But it is available on iTunes, on Amazon Prime, and also on Hulu. And if anyone finds it on YouTube, that's a copyright infringement. And up until just last year, we were still paying back our investors. And this was a labor of love. It's not something that you do. You don't make a doc to make money. We raised, I raised $1 million. And
Wow.
if you look at most movies, if you look at the credits, there's a whole huge team. And it was really at the core of it, George and I, and we had an excellent Oscar-nominated editor and excellent executive producers that helped James Erskine and Holly Mosher and Peter Heller. But at the core was George and I doing the sound and doing the filming and doing the research. And so I'm very proud of the movie, and it stands the test of time because, like I said, the movie's still alive because the bees are still dying.
Still dying. Gotcha. So people can get it via Apple iTunes
Yeah,
and Hulu
and
and
Amazon
and
Prime.
Amazon.
And and on our website, Vanishing Bees, if they want a DVD or educational, there's if they screen it, there is a screening license. Yeah, but
Great.
they can go to Vanishing of the Bees, and then we send them materials on how to carry out a screening and use the film as a tool for their own purposes to raise awareness. Because, there's a burgeoning the bees are doing better in the cities than in the countryside, which says
Right.
a lot. And there has been an explosion of beekeeping, and the bees are on the forefront of our consciousness, I tell people, more than ever before. But I still run into people, like I was just in Florida covering Zach Voorhees, the Google whistleblower, and other speakers, and had the privilege to introduce myself, and people came up to me and wanted to learn more about the bees and what they can do to help. I really wish Netflix would, I'd give it for free, just stream it.
Ah,
But
unbelievable. And it's so perverse. I mean, it would make them money, right? It would be another piece of inventory in their collection, and it couldn't hurt them, but they somehow can't get it together to just let it live where it was already living.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. This is well, you know what? This just as we've talked about in other conversations. This is the way it is, and we're all going to have to be more resourceful and more supportive of each other and each other's work. And I want to say this, and I say this to everybody, or I say this when often on these calls, and I want to repeat it. And we don't get the government we deserve. We don't get the medical system we deserve. We don't get the educational system we deserve, but we do get the media we deserve because we pay for media. We pay for Netflix. We pay for access to cable. We pay for the newspaper. So we're spending money. So I want to remind everybody, if you want more good things, like Miriam's film, buy it. Pay the makers for their work directly, because we all have disposable. When it comes to entertainment and media, we all seem to have disposable income, and if you want to change the world, literally, a relatively painless and very straightforward way to do that would be to directly support the people that are making the media that's important. They'll give us any measure of junk. I mean, they'll pour junk on us all day and night for free. But if you want the good stuff, you have to sort of be alert, see where it is, and make sure you're supporting the people that are creating it. Hey, you mentioned earlier in our conversation that you had been badly injured, and I guess the process of recovering from that made you look at your life in a different way and inspired you. Was one of the inspirations for you to get involved in making this film. Maybe this would be a good occasion to talk about that. I know the nature of your injury
Sure.
and how you recovered from it.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah,
No thanks to Western medicine, that's for sure.
yeah.
No thanks to them. I didn't have insurance. I was hit by a Ford Explorer outside of the now defunct Bodhi Tree, which is a metaphysical bookstore, which was integral in my spiritual awakening when I read Out on a Limb at the age of 13,
Oh,
and by Shirley MacLaine. And I was in a crosswalk, and the guy didn't see me, and I didn't sue him because I didn't grow up in this litigious mindset as a Canadian. In retrospect, I actually wish I did, because I had to have subsequent surgeries. I had to learn how to walk again, so I broke 5 ribs and fractured my L1 and tore my rotator cuff and broke my left femur and had to be outfitted with a 14-inch titanium rod that usually doesn't come out of the body, and was not even given physical therapy. And I had 2 screws. They kind of go inside the bone and scoop out the bone marrow and put the rod in. And I used yoga to learn how to walk again. And when the bone wasn't healing, intuitively, well, I could feel the screw above the knee. Intuitively, I literally sussed out, my uncle is an orthopedic surgeon, but has a whatever policy doesn't operate on family, and that was a long time ago. I was 29, I'm 46 now. And put me in touch with, I think, an Egyptian orthopedic surgery in the outskirts of LA. And I remember going across the street to the bank machine to get $1,000 in cash so that the guy can remove the screw from my body, and I asked him to keep the screw. But intuitively, it helped dynamize the bone, and they didn't outfit the bone properly because of the inflammation. I reckon the titanium was quote unquote toggling and caused me massive pain. And after that, I had PTSD, and I didn't know it, but my body just erupted. I was going to do a short book called, my nickname is Mimi's Medical Mishaps. And I used everything that happened as an initiation, and I took health into my own hands. And that was really my initiation into alternative health, and became that's what I would, and that's what I still do as my pastime is read. I'm in school now in the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, because I do consulting, but coaching is different. And was really a wake-up call to Western medicine, especially in the U.S. I ended up working one of my first jobs. Well, I hosted a documentary in Cairo on the Ark of the Covenant, and then I landed a job as the assistant to the director on the reshoots on Catwoman. So I was able, through Warner Brothers, to get insurance and go back to the orthopedic surgeon, the head of Cedars, because I'm lucky that I got hit on Melrose Avenue. If I had gone to a county hospital, who the hell knows what would have happened to me. I've heard horror stories. So I was able to go back to the doctor, and before that, I conducted an interview. I stated that I was writing a story on hardware, because good luck getting an orthopedic surgeon on the phone, and did an informal poll asking, can you remove the rod? After my near-death experience, I woke up with supernasal powers, and my intuition
I'm sorry.
heightened.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Did you say super nasal?
Yeah, super nasal
Wait a
powers.
minute. Wait a minute. You got to
I
explain that one.
I broke my tailbone,
Oh,
and I was told that the tailbone is linked to olfactory senses, and for
okay.
whatever reason, I woke up and my nasal powers were off the charts, so that I could tell that the orderly smelled like Tide, cigarettes, bleach. Ironically, while I was convalescing, stuck in an apartment in Hollywood for many months, because I literally couldn't walk, I I read the book Perfume and really resonated with Grenouille, I think is his frog was his name, but he had an impeccable sense of smell. That has now developed into chemical sensitivities. So
Gotcha.
I smell, and that's because after making Vanishing of the Bees, ironically at an environmental film festival in the Dominican Republic, I was a victim of a pesticide spray, ironically. And then I now tell people that I'm an environmental indicator, and people with multiple chemical sensitivities are. So I'll walk in and be like, oh, there's a gas leak here. Or there's some foul smell that average person, because there's something called nose blindness
Uh-huh.
that people don't pick up. And maybe, God, every time I go into a lift, it's like people are programmed AC on and your toxic freshener
Right.
blowing. And it's like, go and watch the movie called Stink. You are subjecting yourself to endocrine disruptors and estrogen mimickers. And if you start seeing man boobies, maybe you should consider that those fragrances are part of the equation. But yeah, that's what supernasal powers are. I have a very acute sense of smell.
Gotcha.
So I see with my nose.
And not to take us off the track too far,
Yeah.
how disabling was your multiple chemical sensitivities?
Well,
Did you have a period
it's
where you
still
could?
disabling.
Yeah. I mean, you're able to fly, and I mean,
Well, I have a mask, and I've been a digital nomad, and I've covered covered aerotoxic syndrome, because every time the plane leaves, you smell this horrible smell from the engine, this leak, which is it's organophosphates in there. So it's difficult. What can I say? When I was in the jungle last December, I was seen as a freak because I wear carbon. It's not fun. It's not fun when I'm going to travel next week, or I traveled last week, and having to tell the Airbnb people, hey, can you not use Tide? You're seen as difficult, where in actuality there should be a policy, and in more spiritual gatherings or more aware, conscious circles, you don't wear fragrances because they're bothersome and they're toxic.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
so that
we're on the same page on that, and we've done a lot of shows on that, letting people know that these delightful air fresheners are literally have neurotoxins in them. Literally, that if you took some of the ingredients of those air
yeah,
fresheners and put
yeah.
them in a barrel and left them on the side of the road, you'd be arrested for illegal disposal of toxic waste. And yet somehow this stuff is allowed to be sprayed in
And it's
people's.
programmed.
Yeah.
People think like, oh, I'm being clean. Here's the air con, and here's the freshener, and it's like, no, you're polluting people.
Mm.
And it's about education, and people are just programmed robots now, unfortunately to say, not thinking. Like, I encourage everyone, like, why do you do the things you do?
Mm-hmm.
Take a moment to question why you eat the things you do, and your actions, and realize that you're a sovereign, that the human species is amazing. So when I was sprayed by the pesticides and went to the doctor, it took me a while to realize it was really, sorry about that,
Sure.
my neighbor, my chemical body burden.
Yeah.
The endocrinologist gave me a blank stare and gave me Cymbalta and prednisone, which I said F you to,
Yeah.
and took health into my own hands, and took 6 years to reverse what I was labeled as having lupus and fibro. And now I'm dealing with mold toxicity. And looking back, just knowing that it's because I probably growing up in the 70s and early 80s on antibiotics, and just that really compromising the immune and the biome, the gut biome, which is where that health starts in the
Sure.
gut.
Sure. We know it, and we try to convey that on the Real Food Channel, but it's still new knowledge for
Yeah.
the vast majority. But bit by bit, people are getting the idea. So you were hit by this car and dragged an entire block, and
No, to crosswalk 50 feet.
oh, that's
I
still
mean, I
pretty
don't know. Yeah, it's
still
still
pretty
a
far.
lot, but
It's still
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
far. And when you worked your way out of this severe damage done to your body, you felt this, and you used yoga. I imagine nutrition. I imagine a pot.
Well,
Yep.
sorry. When my body kind of erupted, it was 2005 is when I stopped eating gluten and sugar and went on a candida diet. So really ahead of the game. So I had to pivot. I remember a summer of doing wheatgrass, which I can't now ever have wheatgrass again. But of course, as a spiritual being, using positivity. But I was in a lot of physical pain,
Sure.
and I was quite miserable for a long time. I think making the film, before the poisoning, really inspired me again to do something that's greater than me. I think that's very important, and so now I've started a project that included filming the Google whistleblower Zach Voorhees and other people who are talking about censorship and fake news and mainstream media. But a point is to be part of something that is bigger than me. Of course, I run Honey Colony and help people every single day and have clients, and we make a host of excellent products such as chelated silver and molecular hydrogen and CBD. So I feel like I'm doing good. I'm doing good, and it's frustrating to not be able to be abundant because the system, big pharma, is oppressing people.
If you,
And yeah.
Yeah, for people that might have missed the first episode of this two-part interview, the first part was about the brutal censorship of all alternative health information, which is now taking place on the internet. And Miriam is one of many people that's been on the receiving end of this. So on the one hand, they're producing and promoting products that are toxic to us, and on the other hand, they're censoring anybody who talks about it or offers solutions. So it's quite a vise they have us in for the moment, and this is something. It sounds like this is something that you're going to be working on now. How to get us out of this? How to help us all get out of this?
Yeah. Is a question?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think the movement is growing, and our voices will not be mummed. Yeah.
Well, great.
I mean, yes.
Well, great. Well, we look forward to hearing how that develops, and definitely be in touch when you have more to say about that particular project, because this impacts everyone. If we're not allowed to know, and we're not allowed to talk, and we're not allowed to compare notes, that's a pretty bad situation to be in. But the film, again, is Vanishing of the Bees.
Yes.
Was made by Miriam Henane
And George Langworthy.
and George Langworthy. Langworthy. And you can find it on Amazon Prime, Apple, what is the Apple Store? Apple
iTunes.
iTunes. You mentioned another one, Hulu,
Yes, Hulu,
and then people can go direct
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime, and people can go. And I recommend this last bit.
Yes,
If
thank you.
you still have a DVD player, I still do. I'm glad I have it. There's a lot of good stuff that never made it to the digital realm that's on DVD, believe me. And it's good to have a copy. You can give one to your library. You can share it with your friends. You can have a little party, a small one. You can't have a big exhibition without making special arrangements, but you can show it to your friends. It could be an event, and that having the DVD is a good way to do that. And people can get the DVD directly by going to
Going to vanishingbees.com.
vanishingbees.com. And if anybody's facing health challenges and they want to talk with somebody who's been through it, and that's so important. With all due respect to the great healers out there, and there are many of them, there is a there is a big jump in quality of understanding and empathy
Yeah.
when the person advising you has literally experienced the suffering. Let's not put a fine point on it. The suffering of the ailment. It's no longer a theory. It's no longer an abstraction. It becomes something that the practitioner can understand because they've been through it themselves. So if somebody wants to talk with you about health issues, how would they be in touch with you?
Well, I can send you a link. So I'm a functional medicine consultant, and yes, to dovetail, yeah, a lot of people like to work with me because they know that I've been through it and that I've reversed an autoimmune condition, or now if they want to talk to me about mold, which is way more common than people think, I'll send a link, or please email me at Maryam, Maryam, at honeycolony, COLONY.com. And yeah, please buzz on over to honeycolony.com. And if you are on social media, specifically Twitter, please follow me, given I am shadow banned and doing important work to put out, to inspire, educate, and empower people to be their own best health advocate.
Great. Well, thank you, Miriam. We've been talking with Miriam Hanain, and she is the maker, among other things, of the film Vanishing of the Bees.
Thank you.
And we're going to have all the links below the interview, and share the interview. A lot of good information here. If you missed the previous interview with Miriam, definitely listen to that. We get more into the reality. I've been telling people about this for many years, and I think some people thought I was exaggerating. I think now it's just so it's beyond obvious now that the internet has been basically co-opted and colonized by some pretty nefarious people. And it's now up to all of us to understand that, and B, to start taking steps to liberate it again and get it back to where it was, because it was a beautiful thing. There was a sweet spot in time there, right? I mean, I remember, and you could put out a video, and if it was good, the sky was the limit to how many people would see it. And now, if you're putting out a video on a topic that the powers that be don't like, you're lucky if anybody sees it. Even though in a previous era you might have gotten 10, 50. You believe it or not, I had a video that had 5 million views once, and I'm lucky now to get 1,000. Sometimes if it's a good topic, it'll go beyond that. But from 5 million to 1,000, that's quite a drop,
And this is a supposed democracy.
Yeah,
What?
yeah. But we're all going to be putting our heads together on how to combat this. We are going to prevail. It's just going to take a little time. But meanwhile, I want to encourage everybody. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of things in life we don't get the best. In the realm of education and information, you really have control about getting the best, and that's a matter of sourcing things with your own good common sense. And when you see somebody producing worthwhile material, to support that person directly, because the powers that be are not only not supporting good things, they're working pretty hard to make sure you never hear about the good things that are out there. So every little bit helps. Every little bit is important. And I think when we get through to the other side of this, which I'm confident we will, we're actually going to have a better, more conscious society, because people are going to realize that, you just can't turn on the switch, flip the switch, and just passively accept whatever information they want to give us. We got to be, hunters and gatherers, and actually, right?
Absolutely.
Just think about it. Our ancestors woke up every day and had to go out into the jungle and find food. Nobody handed it to them, and there was no supermarket, and it wasn't delivered by Amazon Prime. They had to figure it out on a daily basis. So that's sort of the nature of life. And I think since we now live in an information sphere, we've got to develop our hunting and gathering skills, which includes supporting the people like Miriam who are doing such important and good work. So
Thank
Miriam,
you so much. Thank you so much for having me and speaking with me. And I am just grateful at the opportunity to be able to be heard.
yep. Well, you will be, and my folks are really good about sharing things too with other people, so we don't know how far this will go. But thank you, Miriam.